want to let you have an opportunity to respond to Donald Trump's disparagement of you, if you care to.
Well, I really don't care to, simply because it's just typical. It's typical Donald. But I like his allegations against me. And considering, just look at who the guy is, right? This is a guy who has an affair, actually multiple affairs, while his wife had just had a child, right? The Child Separation Act, which was just a disgrace and just denigrated America's standing in the world. His attacking on President Obama's Affordable Care Act, leaving millions of Americans without health coverage. His racist rants, which we know are just every day, including the fact that he couldn't even mention George Floyd's name at any point in time. And finally, January 6th, the big lie, and his continuous promotion of the big lie. So I wear it as a badge of honor. So thank you for that, Donald. I appreciate it.
Clearly, you did. You did care to. You did. Let's talk about the Trump Organization, because you know that organization well. I mean, because I think when people think of a company like a corporation, you think of a big corporation like Enron or one of these companies that gets in trouble. But this is like a mom and pop organization, right? It's basically Trump, the kids, and Alan Weisselberg. Do I have that wrong?
Well, yeah, it's bigger than that. But you're right. It's a glorified mom and pop company. There's probably 14. When I was there were 14 executive vice presidents, myself being included. Other than that, you had a lot of support staff, a lot of secretarial staff, and so on. Now, at one point in time, Trump, which is, again, part of his ongoing continuous lies, made allegations that he employed 10,000 people. Well, that's not true because, again, he doesn't own the buildings that he had employees in, right? It's either owned by homeowners associations or it's licensing deals, but he included them into it. So he included everybody. But you're right, Joy. It is a mom and pop organization. But, for a quick second there, I just want to go back because, I think it's worth me saying when he's talking about my credibility. I personally think, and, I'll ask you your opinion on it, that my credibility is a lot more in demand than Trump's petty, pathetic temper tantrums, right, masquerading as strength, because that's what he does, right? He goes ahead and he, puts out these statements. And the great thing is that he's no longer on Twitter. So I didn't even know about, this denigration of me until your producers called to tell me about it. So, he's really, he's mic'd out right now.
You don't read blogs? Let's talk about the hiding of assets, because the reason I asked you about the size of the organization is that would mean presumably that someone like Alan Weisselberg and maybe even the Trump children, would they be in the know about the valuation of these assets? Because you're talking about assets that Ivanka and Jared and the Trump sons are out there pitching and selling these licensing agreements for. Would they potentially have exposure here? Because I was asking in the previous segment, should they be getting their own lawyers?
Well, they have to get their own lawyer. And, one of the things, I have a very different opinion. I'm going to answer your question, but I have a little bit of a different opinion on this than most people. The answer is yes, they would know what the valuations are, specifically on project that they were designated to. Each of the children were designated to different properties, but Alan Weisselberg knew every single dollar in and every single dollar, not even dollar, to the penny. Every single penny in and every penny out went through Alan Weisselberg's desk and then reported before and after to Donald J. Trump. So there was as I stated, there was a very small core group of executives, a larger, subset, but a very small core group. Now, it's interesting because I also watched the segment before this where you were talking about, Trump and whether or not that the kids need to. I believe that they do need it, and I'm going to tell you why. Everyone keeps talking about, Rudy. What did we get off of his electronics? What are they going to get now from the Trump Organization? How are they going to get Weisselberg to flip? Are they going to go after, it's not just Barry, but it's also his other son, Jack, who is part of Ladder Capital. I think they already know this. I think Donald Trump is going to flip on all of them. What do you think about that, including his children? I really believe that Donald Trump is going to turn around. You always get shocked when I say things, Joy. I really believe that Donald Trump cares for only himself, and he realizes that his goose is cooked. So when he turns around and he gets questioned about what you're just asking about, inflation, it wasn't me. It was Alan.
Wow.
It was my accountant. It was the appraiser. It's never Donald. See, this is the
Wow.
problem. It's never ever Donald Trump. It's always somebody else. It wasn't Donald Trump who had the affair. It wasn't Donald Trump who directed me to make the payments to Stormy Daniels. It wasn't Donald Trump who got the benefit of the relationship and the actions, right? It was Michael Cohen. And right, I'm the bad guy into it. Why? Because I didn't take the fall. Well, what's going to happen when the DA or the Attorney General, and listen, I give her a lot of credit, just as your previous guests did, a lot of credit, because she didn't start this as criminal. She started it as civil. But what's going to happen when all of a sudden they turn around and they start asking him about his tax returns or about the devaluation of the assets or the way that he took deductions? I don't do my taxes. It's my accountant. So he's going to turn on his accountant and point the finger. He's going to say, Don Jr. handled that. Ivanka handled that. Melania, don't take me, take Melania. He's going to tell them to take everyone except for himself.
Even Ivanka?
That's just the kind of guy he is. Everyone. Ivanka, too.
Wow. Last question before I let you go. Any thoughts on the FEC throwing out the case looking into whether Trump violated election law with that Stormy Daniels payment, which, of course, you paid the price for?
Yeah, I mean, isn't that apparent? Not only did the FEC drop this, but so did the SDNY. We forget about that, too. They had about a dozen sealed indictments regarding this. And then all of a sudden, well, we don't have enough. And this is, again, under the Bill Barr, control and the Donald Trump administration. All of a sudden, they did not have enough information within which to bring a claim. That's kind of funny, considering you came after me with an anvil over my head and, threatening my wife as well, if in fact I didn't plead guilty. So, it bothered me a lot when I saw that, considering everything was done, and it's on tape. It's on tape of my discussion. Everything was done at the direction of and for the benefit of Donald J. Trump. And I do have to say that my credibility, I believe, is going to end up getting Don Jr., Ivanka, Jared, Eric, Weisselberg, his kids, some orange jumpsuits. Yeah.